Welcome everyone to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the Advertising and Marketing Manager, and I am your host today. Today, the sponsor for this episode of Textiles and Tea is Tabby Tree Weavers. They offer weaving supplies, classes, books. Go see all they have to offer at tabbytreeweaver.com. We will take questions as always today, the last 15 minutes. Please put your questions in the Q&A so I can see them. Love the chat, keep those comments coming, but I really need the questions in the Q&A. Today, all the way from England, we're very international, we have Margo Selby. Margo is a renowned British textile artist and designer. Her design philosophy is focused on pushing the boundaries of weaving to create contemporary, stylish fabrics for a range of textile applications, uniting the very best weavers with high quality fibers to produce beautifully crafted products. Welcome, Margo. It's great to have you here.
Hi, everyone.
It's a late day for you, isn't it?
Well, yeah, the kids have just gone to bed. I know it's Textiles and Tea. I was tempted to have a G and T, but I've actually made myself a cup of tea. Honest, there's tea.
You could have done G and T. We don't care. I bet some of our have them at 4 o'clock. They're having G and T. Well, what kind of tea are you drinking then?
This is an Indian masala chai.
Oh, so, I love chai.
I love chai. Yeah, spicy and a bit sweet.
There you go. All right. How did you get started in fabrics and fiber, and what was that path for you?
I mean, I've always, like, my family was one of those families that made textiles, you know, at home. My granny had, you know, crocheted tablecloths, or my great granny used to do needlepoint. So there was upholsteries and pictures on the wall, all kind of embroidered. And so it was kind of just surrounding me, like making textiles. And I really got into making friendship bracelets at school. And I remember one day this girl came in, and we used to make these little friendship bracelets with little stripes, little, you know, 3 colors. And this girl came in and she had like 10 colors. It was about 2 inches wide. It had fish and all these elaborate patterns. I was like, oh my God, how did you make that? And she was like, oh, I'm not telling you. So I said, well, I'm gonna go and work this out. And like for several weeks, I think I was about 11, I sat down and I was like, I am gonna work out how to make those patterns. And I knew that you could knot and get a direction in one line or a direction in another line. And after about a few weeks, I went back to school and I'd made one too. I was like, look, I've made one too. And she was like, oh, I got mine in Mexico. And it was a real kind of lesson that if you put your head to anything, you can do it. And also it really taught me that I just love constructing with color. I love constructing textiles, but with that kind of big input of multicolor and getting the color and the structure to work together.
Well, as we talk today, I think we're going to see more and more of that tenacity you have of going after what you want and figuring it out. My first question is, who is Margo Selby Designs? Because there's you as the artist and then there's the design company, correct?
Well, yes. So it started, you asked me how I got into textiles and I didn't fully answer it because after I'd finished school, I ended up going and doing a degree at art college. And well, I started with a foundation where we did a bit of everything, sculpture, graphic design. And I just couldn't believe that you could actually do a degree in textiles, having enjoyed making them when I was a kid. And so, that felt like the natural thing to do. So I got processed by the UK art college system. You go in, you do a foundation, you specialize in something. I chose textiles. Then I did a degree in textiles. You try everything, knitting, printing, embroidery, weaving. And I loved weaving. As soon as I got on the loom, I was like, this is the thing. And then I specialized in weaving. And then when I did the end of my degree, I ended up doing an MA also in woven textiles. So I had like 6 years of university where I basically learned the craft of weaving. And then when I came out, I really had no idea how I was going to fit into the world, because for me, what I loved doing was building cloth. I love weaving. I love the craft of weaving. I like learning how to do different techniques. I like the technical side of it. And a lot of my degree and my MA was all about design, design for fashion, design for interiors. And I would always try, but I was a little bit unsure about how I fitted into those worlds. And I certainly didn't have a depth of understanding in those worlds. And so what was really, really lovely and uplifting was when I started to actually bring my fabric out into the world, was that I had different people wanting to collaborate with me. So I had fashion designers who wanted to collaborate with me. Like, they liked my fabrics and they were like, oh, let's make some jackets. Or some interior designers that were like, oh, we like your fabrics. We'd like to get them woven in a mill and make them into curtains. So that was kind of how it all started. And it started with me with my loom in my bedroom. I had a loom in my bedroom. And then I used to go and work for mills as a freelance designer. And when I was working for the mills, I was always very opportunistic. So if I was designing for them, if there was a little bit of warp at the end of their kind of production run, I would kind of weave a little bit for myself and bring it back and try and sell it. So then I started employing people to make things for me. So it started with me and my loom in my bedroom, and then in my living room, I had a seamstress. And she used to sew up cushions and scarves for me. And then we would go off and do trade shows. That was probably 20 years ago. And now there's actually 13 of us, and we've got a proper studio. And the kids have got their bedroom back. Well, actually, I didn't have kids when I started. But yeah, so it's and the thing is, it's a bit like a snowball effect. Like the team are amazing. The more kind of people I have around me, the more creative we can be, and the more ambitious we can be, and the more amazing kind of textiles we can make. So it's not just me that weaves in the studio now. There's 4 of us. There's 4 weavers, and that's because I really like making really big hand woven artworks, and that scale that I'm wanting to make, it kind of takes a team in order to create it. So yeah, it's really lovely having this wonderful team, and we've got people that work in marketing and social media, and then we've got finance team, and And then, yeah, there's the 4 weavers, but each weaver has another role. So you've got Ellen, who does weaving, but she also supports me with design. So she helps me with when we're designing collections of fabrics for partners. So we work for Osborne and Little, we do a collection of interior fabrics. So me and Ellen will brainstorm the ideas together, and then, you know, she'll work them through. And so, you know, it's kind of the 2 of us together that create those collections. And then we've got Amy. Amy's a weaver as well, and she's also she does all the production. She manages all the production. So she kind of manages how many cushions we're making and how many scarves we're making and how much stock we need to make and who's getting what and where it's going. And that's a really hard job. And then Millie's a new weaver. So she's graduated, I think she graduated 18 months ago. So she's weaving for us now, and she's also supporting the social media. So she kind of helps me to kind of plan what we're going to say on social media and plans it so it all looks pretty and all the colours work nicely together on social media. And then the 4th weaver is me. I'm the 4th weaver.
You knew you were leaving somebody out, right?
I was like, I'm sure there's 4 of us. Oh yeah, it's me.
Well, hello to everyone, and we're glad you're there. So you started out as a Jacquard loom production designer, right? And
Well,
can you talk some about your relationship with Jacquard weaving, how you got into that?
Yeah, so when I did my degree, my first degree, the 3 years, that was at Chelsea College of Art and Design. That was pure Dobby weaving. It was all hand weaving, everything on Dobby looms. And on that particular degree, I would say that was where I learned to weave. I learned how to understand what a loom does, you know, how you can create threading plans, how you can weave colours and make them sit on the surface or blend together. And then when I went to the Royal College of Art, the MA, they had a Jacquard power loom. So they had an industrial loom, and there was, I think, maybe 12 weavers at the Royal College of Art. So we might get, you know, like half a day every couple of weeks, you'd be able to spend time on this loom. And it would be a standard warp. So it was usually white. It was usually a white cotton warp. And the way we got taught to use it. So the way you use it is you design an artwork in a computer, like using an illustration package or a graphic design package. You can design an artwork, or you can go straight into the Jacquard package. But I usually would work on a graphic design package first to come up with the design. And because, you know, I was always into Dobby weaving, which was, you know, blocks and stripes, and I kind of was quite scared going into the Jacquard. I remember I did try a floral, and that was quite interesting technically, to understand how you can kind of blend all the colours in a Jacquard and how you can really draw and paint with a Jacquard. But the design really freaked me out. It was you know, I really like order and repetition. I like the process of weaving and the repetitive motion of weaving and the setting up. And so I think now when you look at my designs, they reflect a lot of the process of weaving. So even when I'm working in Jacquard, when I started just using Jacquard to create geometric shapes, so little circles or, you know, just lots of different geometric shapes, that's when I sort of started to get excited about the Jacquard. So you create this artwork, then you take it into the Jacquard design program and you apply the weaves. So you might have like, say you have a black and white artwork, and then you could apply a sateen weave. So you get the warp face in one of the colours and the weft face in the other colour. So at the Royal College of Art, I learned how to use what I'd been learning and developing on Dobby looms and how to actually apply that to Jacquard. And then the thing that really was exciting for me, it was a really kind of big serious step, I suppose, in my development was I had an internship, a work placement for 3 months in India. So I went to India and they had these beautiful, you know, very fine silk warps, really, really luxurious. And I was able to take some of my designs and weave them on these fine silk warps. So when I say I wove them, I didn't weave them. I gave them the instructions, I gave them the artwork, and I applied the weaves. And I also learned an awful lot from the weavers there about how to use Jacquard in an interesting way, you know, how to use different thicknesses of yarn in there, or how to kind of use that colour and structure combination. And what happened then was the designs which I'd done through my internship had some commercial success. They sold those designs to some of their customers, and that was how I got my first work, because they contacted me and they invited me to come back and do more.
Oh, that's amazing. Just to hear you talk about all the different steps, I'm sitting here, a million questions. One of the things, and it's probably the least important, but I'm just curious. So while you were in school, did you spend all the time in between your actual time on the loom designing, or did you do other things? Does that make sense?
So in the degree and in the MA, so we would primarily be we would be designing cloth. It would be project after project.
Oh, okay.
Designing cloth. So you would come up with a concept, a story, you'd research imagery, color palette. You were encouraged to spend quite a lot of time evolving the design before you even got onto the loom, which I always found really, really hard. And it's really, really difficult to actually, you know, do a lovely drawing and then imagine how that might be interpreted in a cloth. And I think it became a lot clearer to me once I was actually in industry and I needed food, I needed information to create new cloth. So it took me a while to get, but what I always found was I just wanted to get on that loom and start experimenting and start exploring. And for me, it was really, really important. Every warp I put on, always starting with at least 6 samples before going into any further pieces. Really exploring different yarns together, different, if you found a structure that was interesting, weave it in like 6 different yarn combinations and see which one's the best. Or 6 different color combinations, because one of them will have a little bit of magic, which and it's just so worth putting in that time. The other thing I spend loads of time on still is yarn windings. My studio's full of things like this and this.
Oh,
and again,
okay. On the boards? Okay, I get it.
To explore how colors can blend, proportion. Because I do weave a lot of striped warps, but even these, they can be used in the weft. It's because I'm so into color, so that's a really important part of it. And then also at university, I suppose we were encouraged a lot to look at like what was happening in the world and have a good understanding about the fashion industry, the interior industry, how woven textiles could be relevant in those areas. And now I think students today, there's a huge, huge emphasis on sustainability, which we didn't have when I was at university, but it's now become really crucial.
Well, one of the things that struck me was how diverse that you are in the different things that you do, because you teach beginning weaving, right?
Well, I do teach workshops, so I do have complete beginners right through to more experienced weavers. The way I teach is very, I like to let people follow their own path, and it's just encouraging them to experiment and explore.
Well, do you ever find that do you find it's refreshing or distracting to have these extreme polar things? You know, you've got the detailed commission work and designing for professional weaving, and then you have these brand new baby weavers. There's such an expanse.
For me, it's all like, when I first started my business, I sort of taught in universities and through workshops as a way to support my income, because it's so hard to make a living from textiles initially. But then what I find now is that I teach because it's so enriching. You know, if I'm teaching a workshop, I'm just like spending like the whole time thinking of ideas for people, like, oh, why don't you try this and why don't you try that? And you know, you learn so much, and so it's really sort of stimulating.
I would love to take a workshop with you. I'm going to bop over there to England and go do that. You won the Turner Medal, correct?
Oh,
and that was for your color work. So could you, and this was one of the pieces that they must have looked at. Can you talk some about what that prize is? I'm sure people in the US aren't as quite aware. And what did that mean for you to win this award?
So the Turner Medal, it's an award which is given, it's given to Britain's greatest colorist, and it's given every 2 years. It's given to an artist. And for me, the thing that was, you know, so kind of, I was so proud, was the list of people that have had it prior to me. You know, Kay Fassett, Sandra Rhodes, Bridget Riley, really amazing people. So it was just such a privilege to be in that kind of list of amazing artists that had gone before. And then alternately, between the artists' years, they give it to somebody who's got a specialism in color, which is either scientific or you know, more philosophical. So yeah, I know it was such an honor to receive that, and it's so lovely to be recognized when you sort of dedicate your life to something. It's really nice when these little moments happen.
I wish there were more awards like that. I mean, it's not like we all have to have awards, but to be recognized, it's wonderful. I wish we had more of that in the US too. I'm curious about your design process. Do you draw everything out first, then you weave a sample, and then you send it off to the production weaver? How do you do that?
Yeah, so I've actually got a sketchbook here.
Oh, great.
You can see how messy I am. This is a sketch. Well, this sketch here is for the motion fabric, which you saw in a cushion earlier. So I talked about the graphic design packages, but I often do like really rough, those sketches are really just information for me, rather than not something I would normally ever show to people. But then I will put that into a graphic design package, and then on my loom, I'm usually weaving artwork. So I do a lot of sampling where I'm exploring color, proportion, fibers. And then for my commercial textiles, it's like a combination of all of this. So it's the hand woven developments mixed with some of the graphic design illustrations. And then that gets woven together on a jacquard.
I think it's funny that you talk about how you're so messy, because your work is so clean and structured and precise. So how do you combine those contrasts of, how do you see that in your work and in your life?
Well, I suppose I am naturally quite chaotic. I've got like loads of ideas. I've got a lot of ideas rushing around my head. I find it really, really hard to remember everything for the kids at school. There's always a layer of chaos in my house. There's always just, you know, I mean, yeah, if I turn this round, there is a lot of stuff on all the surfaces, and I don't like it. I really, I don't like it. I want to be clean and tidy. And the loom kind of can just make sense of everything, because it's so precise and it's so disciplined that if I just obey the loom, and follow the rules of like the process, it all comes out beautifully and tidy and clean and straight and mathematical and precise. And that makes me feel better about my inner chaos and turmoil.
I don't think I've ever heard that description before, but you're right. I have visions of like a big funnel that you just dump stuff into it and then boom, it's nice and neat and clean on the loom. I like that.
I have to say that when I am weaving, I am very strict about things like, you know, like if I'm weaving blocks, they are mathematically correct and they all divide beautifully into the structure so that, you know, everything has to, I really like the mathematics of it. I think there's such beauty in mathematics, and you know, it can make everything so lovely. And so if I respect the mathematics, the work comes out beautifully. And then I also love, as I've said so many times, the color and actually blending the yarn on the loom, but also working with structures that allow me to get that pure color, which also gives a lovely, clean, crisp finish. So often they're weft-faced or warp-faced, and they're structures which will allow the yarn to sit on the surface.
Well, this next image we have coming up is the series, and I'm going to do this badly, I can tell, vexillium.
This is the vexillium series.
Vexillium, yes. Now this is examples of tampus work. Lampus work. Boy, I'm having a hard time today. Lampus work. So for those of us who aren't real clear what this is, can you talk some about what this is and how this structure drew you in? What was so special about this structure?
So first of all, I'm going to tell you vexillum. It was a Latin word for flag or banner. And it was, you know, they were like wartime flags, I think. And I just, you know, I like creating textiles that shout, that are kind of like, you know, really, really striking, and have that kind of presence that maybe a vexillum banner may have originally had. I'd also like to point out that none of these are Jacquard. This is all woven on Dobby loom. And actually, wow, this is all woven on my 24 shaft arm loom. An arm loom is similar to an AVL, for those of you who might have woven on an AVL. Now, the lampas structure, some people might call it a tapestry weave, some people might call it a brocade weave, but essentially it's a tied weave. So what I've got is 2 warps on each. So these pieces here that you can see, each one is made up of either 2 or 3 widths of fabric. So the first piece on the left, that's 2 widths of fabric which have been stitched together. So I've woven one in what the warp is the purple to gold. So I've woven one piece one way up, and then I've woven the other piece upside down, but measured every stripe absolutely precisely, so that it joins up and it stitches together neatly. And then so each block, there's 10 blocks. I've got 24 shafts. Each block is on 2 shafts, and the warp is dense, so it's really, really solid. So when you bring the colourful wefts over, you just sit them completely on the surface or completely on the back of the block. So the warps are just on the top or on the back, but then there's a supplementary warp, which is very, very fine silk. And that's where the tying comes down, the tied weave element. That's just doing tabby the whole time. So that fine stitch is when you lay your really colourful wefts on top of your really colourful warps, that little binding stitch warp binds it all together. So it makes it secure. And this is actually a weave which would have been used in like traditional Huguenot brocade fabrics, used in little florals. It's very much a weave that would have come from a Jacquard fabric, but I'm not using it in the Jacquard fabric. I'm using it on my Dobby looms in this kind of very graphic, abstract, geometric way.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh.
So that's, yeah, I'm very excited about these these vexillium works, and we're making more of those at the moment. It's very slow. That was 6 months work solidly with a team of us.
Those 3?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually made 4. I mean, when I say 6 months solid, you know, people were doing other things, but we tried to keep the loom moving.
I didn't know if there was another image in, because that was an exhibit shot. I didn't know if there was another piece also.
There is, yeah, there is another one. I made 4 from that first sort of series of vexillium, but I've done some smaller studies, and I'm making some bigger ones at the moment. So you can always keep your eye on either my social media, Instagram, or my website to see what's happening. And hopefully we'll do a few new pieces each year.
Well, as you went through school, it sounds like I'm going to get a yes to this question, but as you were going through school and all the things that you've been through, have you had like an aha moment where something was like, you know, I get it? Or
Yeah, I think so. I think when I first left university and I went to work in India, and I was working for Jacquard mills, and then I started my business selling Jacquard fabrics, scarves, cushions, started designing upholstery, bed linen, all very kind of practical, usable things which were commercially made. So using my design skills and my understanding of weaving to create products which we could all buy and use in our homes, mostly homes, a little bit of fashion and scarves. But one day I was weaving some upholstery designs on my loom, so developing some, and I thought, you know what, I just want to let go of the boundaries that are associated with weaving commercial textiles. I don't want to worry about how it's going to repeat, or how it's going to rub test when it's used for upholstery, or you know, how many colors the mill can use, or does the mill have my palette. I just wanted to let go of all that and just make a piece of cloth just for the sake of making the most beautiful piece of cloth I could make. And that aha moment was just treating the fabric like an artwork. So using the weaving as my art form, and not thinking commercially all the time, and the importance of just weaving, the importance of just staying on that loom. So that aha moment was like, I just need to weave. I just need to weave, and I just need to weave what I love, what's going to really kind of uplift me. And by doing that, by doing something that's really true to yourself, it makes something which other people will love. It enriches everything else I do. So I still do commercial textiles. I love that kind of commercial side. I like the feeling of seeing like 100 meters coming off a power loom, and that everyone can have a little, you know, those artworks, because of the time they take, they become very expensive, and then they're exclusive, and they're for an exclusive audience. And I really also love doing like hand towels, bath towels, where everyone can have one, but it's still got some of that kind of authenticity in the development that's gone into them.
well, I heard somebody talk one time about color, and they were saying that sometimes it's hard to choose what the public wants and will buy and still be true to yourself. Of, I don't like these 2 colors together, but I think they'll sell, or I don't like these 2 colors together, so I'm not using them. Did you have to struggle with that at all?
I definitely do consider the audience. So for example, I make carpets with a company called Alternative Flooring. Mm-hmm. Now, I do consider what is appropriate to put on the floor. But when I go completely wild and do whatever I want, it really sells. It really does, you know. But then, you know, some of the really commercial palettes, you know, I might, you know, I've just done a collection of curtains with a collaborator in the UK, and the colours are quite soft, clean, they're fresh, and it's because I'm designing my home, and I was thinking, what do I want in my home? I wanted soft, clean, fresh, but I still wanted the graphic elements. That's what I wanted in my home, so I designed it. And yeah, it's so far, I think it's selling.
Oh, good. So we have an example.
Colors. I love all colors, and I don't think there's such a thing as, you know, a bad color. Any color can work. It's just about what you put with it.
Yeah, that's the tricky part. That's what you're really good at. Some of us, not so much, but we're getting there. We're getting there. We have an example of your deflected double weave and a hand knotted works. And I'm always curious when you have someone who is so strong in color like you are, but you also have a lot of structure. So when you're designing, which do you think comes first for you, or does it?
Well,
structure or color?
Well, I mean, I think the real skill is to get color and structure to work together. So deflected double weave, you know, you have to have contrasting colors in order for the structure to show. And you have to use the light with the light and the dark with the dark, or, you know, you have to make sure you pair colors correctly so that it shows the color off. And so often you can use color to with a structure to create a form. You know, the color can be used to create the highlight part of the structure, or it can be used to create contrast. And I think for me, to make textiles really, really interesting, it's about getting as much contrast and texture as possible. So there's all sorts of different types of contrast and texture that can be, that combine color and structure. So it might be thick and thin fibers, or, you know, structures which create a high and a low texture. It could be, you know, really bright colors next to really like more muted colors. You often find with all my bright colored palettes, there'll be a gray or a beige or a neutral in there. It's like that contrast, that balance. So you've got the thick and thin, or the high and low, the bright, the neutral, and then also the light and the dark. So it's, if you can get as many different contrasts into your fabric as possible, I think that's where the kind of texture and the depth and the interest comes.
So do you think a lot of your knowledge just comes from sampling, practice, try this, try that?
Yeah, I mean, it comes from sampling, practice, and exploration, and also from teaching. You know, I've always, for 20 years I've taught, and so I've had to find a way to articulate what's going on in my head. Sometimes we do things and we're just doing them. It's instinctive. You know, you just do what you do and you don't really think about how. And then through teaching, I've had to learn, you know, how to articulate why I'm making the choices I'm making. And even when I won the Turner medal, I was given this Turner medal, and the prize, as well as getting a lovely silver medal, the prize is to give an hour's lecture on color. You know, that was terrifying. So you get given a medal like that and you want to make sure you've got something to say. So I had to really, really think about my color choices and why I use color. And you can actually see that lecture through a link in my website.
Okay.
It's in I think it's in the blog somewhere. There's the Turner medal. There's a link to the presentation which I gave all around color and using color in my work, and why I look at color and the kinds of inspiration I look at, things like that. But yeah, I think, you know, I'm excited by weaving. I get very, very excited by designing and doing new things. It's just my life. It's my passion as well as my job. And so, yeah, 20 years of doing that same thing, you kind of, you learn a few things along the way.
One of the phrases I saw on your website and in a couple of your talks and an interview, that you talked about art into industry. What does that mean for you? Can you talk some about that?
Yeah, so it's back to that moment that I talked about, the aha moment. It's about, I let go of boundaries of designing for industry, and I just focused on weaving as an art practice, making things which I love, which I feel are an expression of what I want to create, really enjoying both the cloth, the form, the colour, and just sort of indulging in that. That's my art. When you then diffuse that into industry and take all of that exploration and turn it into an industrial or a commercially woven cloth, that commercially woven cloth has got something really special into it. You know, it's got a little piece of that, all that thought and that intensity that goes on when you're creating an artwork, that gets diffused into these commercial textiles, and they I think it's what makes them successful.
Oh, I can see that. I can see that. That's great. Well, what's next for you? I'm sorry.
Often you'll see a fabric that I've woven and you can really see the direct link from the artwork to the fabric. And more I'm doing that. So you've seen the vexillium artworks. And at the moment I'm working with the Scottish mill to develop those into woolen blankets. It will take, they won't be around until the end of next year, but I'm trying to develop a quality which will give that kind of really rich colour and try and really capture some of the drama in those artworks, but turn it into a blanket.
Does it normally take that long? Do you really have to have that much of a turnaround to get something produced?
Well, I think the way that would work, so I've already got the idea of I've got some blanket qualities which are warp and weft face, which will get me that kind of clean colour, and then I've spoken to the mill and I've talked to them about it. They've sent some different blanket qualities, and so now I'll create a final artwork. So I'll find out how many ends per inch will their blanket loom take. So I've got to convert it into an industrial cloth. So I've got to use their yarn. I won't use my yarn, I'll use their yarn because they know how to weave their yarn. Often when working with these mills, they are amazing craftspeople in their own right. They've got amazing knowledge of how to work with the materials that they've got access to. So work with their yarn, work with their set, how many ends per inch do they weave on that particular yarn. And then I'll redesign the stripes and the pattern to fit their warp and set. And then they'll create a CAD. So I'll give them my CAD, which will be a CAD is a computer aided design. So I will give them my CAD, and that will be my interpretation of what I think they can do. And then they will respond with their official CAD, which is they've got a computer weaving program which will illustrate what their looms can do. And so that might look a little bit different from my CAD, because mine is what I think they can do or hope they can do, and theirs will be what they can actually do. So once that's approved, sometimes there's some toing and froing. It might be like, oh, it doesn't look quite how I imagined. Maybe we need to like make that stripe a bit bigger, or maybe we need to kind of change that color, or, you know. So once we've got that far, then we go to a sample. So then they weave a sample, and a sample might take them a month or 6 weeks just to make the sample. The back and forth of the computer designs, that might take several weeks. Once the sample is approved, production is going to be probably 3 to 4 months. Depends. I mean, a lot of people are bringing their production back to the UK because of sustainability. People that have been weaving all around the world, and that people are so the mills in the UK are quite busy. So I might have to wait for that production time, but that's okay. It's okay to slow down, and I am quite a fast person, but that's why weaving and slowing down is good for me.
We have tons of questions, so let's take some of our questions from the audience. This is from Jane Eisenstein. She said, why did you start using tencel in your Lampas art pieces?
Tencel. I started using tencel. The first ones, the first Lampas pieces I wove with cotton. And I do really, really like the cotton. And in fact, the warp that I'm putting onto my loom at the moment, that is a cotton one. But then also the tencel. I don't do a lot of my own dyeing. I would like to do more dyeing in the future, but at the moment, I've got 2 kids and I'm running my commercial business. And also I like so many colors. If I had to dye all those colors, so I just, I like, buying lots and lots of colors from ready stocked yarns. And I loved the palette that the 2/8 tencel, you might have all used it from Webs, the 2/8, I actually buy it from America. But it's very easy to weave with. It's got a really lovely luster, so it's got a really nice shine. It's got a nice contrast between if I put cotton or I've been using some hand spun wool in the weft, and you get this contrast between the shine and the matte. Again, another contrast, adding texture to the cloth. And also that color range in the 2/8 tencel is beautiful.
Well, this is an interesting question. This is from Dorothy Miller. She said, this is a bit of a random question, but I saw the Mastercrafts episode on weaving that you were in. Do you know what happened to the contestants? I know the winning gentleman had an internship in your studio. Was this a British program?
A lot about me, doesn't she? She's good.
Way to go, Dorothy. Was this in Britain?
It was, yeah. So it was a TV program. I think you can watch it on YouTube, actually.
Okay.
Where I taught 3 people how to weave for 6 weeks. And it was like a bit of a competition to see who could come up with who was the best weaver after 6 weeks, sort of. And there was three of them. So the guy who won, Treff, I don't know if he's still weaving now. He did weave for a while. The girl who came second, in all fairness, looking back, she probably should have won. And she's the one that's actually still got a business in weaving. Her name's Holly Berry. And you can actually look her, she's on Instagram. She'll be under the hashtag Weavers of Instagram, I'm sure. And she's ever so lovely. I think the reason why she didn't win it on the day was because she did a lot of double cloth weaving, and the guy who won it was being quite creative with his structures and had actually created some of his own quite clever structures. And I think that was what picked it for the judges.
Oh, that's amazing. Now I got to go look that up. So I got to see that. That's cool. What do you find? This is again from Dorothy. Boy, Dorothy, you're busy today. What do you find most challenging about working in textiles, and what's the most gratifying?
Well, I think at the moment, definitely the most challenging thing for me is sustainability and like what I should be doing about it and what my choices should be and how to tread that path. Because actually, when you look into it, nearly every textile manufacturing process has its issues. There are a lot of difficulties with every kind of route. There's no absolute perfect scenario apart from stopping, but that's not going to happen. And also, if I stopped producing commercial textiles, that would mean that I would have to lose my staff. So for the economy, I think it's about how to find the better solutions. So that's really in my mind at the moment. I mean, I think it's in everyone's minds, but it's really trying to really be creative about how to make things better, more thoughtful, and also make sure that you're making things that aren't disposable. So that's the challenge. And then the biggest satisfaction is probably getting those big fabric artworks stretched and hung on the wall. We might spend 6 months weaving those and not really hoping it's going to look interesting. And, you've got an idea and you've got a sort of vision of what it's going to look like. And then you stretch them and they still haven't quite come alive. But when you hang them on the wall, it is so exciting. And then when people see them as well, and have that experience of interacting with them, that's all really uplifting.
Well, Karen LeBlanc has an interesting question. For the Turner Award, did you apply for it or did someone nominate you? So what was that process?
Yeah, somebody nominated me. And so I just got a letter one day to say that I'd been nominated, and the person who nominated me asked me to help him with his presentation. And it was someone who I'd done a lecture for previously, and I'd talked about colour, and he'd enjoyed the way I talked about colour. And then I'd done some of those big artworks and won an award for those at a London, it was at a big international craft fair called Collect. And so I think there was a momentum happening around my work. And so, yeah, it was lovely. It was lovely to be nominated.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to make a living in textiles? She says she's a dyer and a weaver. This is Dorothy again.
That is really hard. I mean, it is so, no. I mean, I don't want to, it's so hard to make a living in textiles. It's very difficult to know how to direct you without talking to you personally about what your own strengths are and passions are. I think following your passion is really, really important. But also, I think for me, I have really enjoyed the business side of things as well. So, and that's where, you know, there are lots of amazing designers out there, but often people find it hard to think commercially. And so I think it's really understanding price points. So understanding the market and what the possibilities are, and understanding the value of things, and then making sure that you can make things that fit that value. It's tricky, and then thinking about the time, you know, the time that goes into everything. Certainly artwork is a really good direction if that's your thing, because it's more valuable than a scarf. But there can be a lot of, you know, scarves are probably easier to sell if you can make them efficiently. It's difficult though. Yeah,
it is. Nan Holberg wants to know, what is your personal favorite for a type of loom, number of harnesses, and the style of loom? And do you ever get to weave for pleasure, or is it always for business?
Well, I would say that all my artworks are woven for pleasure, absolute pleasure. So, but I am looking forward to the day, and this comes back to making a living. I am looking forward to the day where I can weave tea towels, just, you know, for my family and friends. So it's not that there is a kind of commercial end. I mean, I love weaving my artworks because I'm driven by the passion and the excitement of seeing them hanging on the wall. And so that's but there is also a commercial end to that, but I don't make them to sell. They have been selling, and that's a bonus. I actually make them more because it's that thing of making something that you're really passionate about and love, that enriches the whole business. But my loom, I like Dobby looms, and I like CompuDobby looms, so they're linked to my computer so that I can do complex patterns and not have to think about what shaft I'm lifting or what pedal I'm pressing. So I like to program it. I like to plan it all out, program it, and then sit and weave. And I've got a 24 shaft arm loom in my other studio, which is in the centre of Whitstable where I live. But this is my home studio. This is new, this loom, and it's a 32 shaft Leclerc weave bird. So this is the first, I've woven a tea towel warp on it, which was pleasurable, but it was also to test the loom. And now I'm putting on one of my big artwork warps, and I'm really hoping that the loom will weave it in the same way that my arm loom does.
So good question. You got to introduce your new baby loom there. Oh, this is a great question. This is from Paula Williams. Your work is graphical rather than figurative.
Mm.
Have you found that some graphical designs stand the test of time better than others?
I do feel like, generally speaking, I don't follow fashion, and I don't. My designs do tend to have a timelessness. I think graphic geometrics in beautiful colours. I think that I think that's also part of a sustainability thing, not to make things that are fashionable and that are going to go out of fashion, but instead to make things that are just really, really beautiful that will be loved for a long time. And a lot of the textiles that I've sold, I've been selling for years. I mean, I've got designs on my website which I've probably had for 15 years. I do like to do new things because I've got customers or fans that I've had for years that buy my things that want something new, and they want to see, and also because I'm a designer and I like creating, and I want to create something new because that's part of the pleasure.
We were talking about earlier about, do you choose colors for what sells and or for what you like? And here's another aspect of it is, does the Pantone color of the year impact on your color production?
Do you know what? I don't know. I don't actually know what it is this year. Does anyone know what the Pantone color of the year is? I mean, if I knew it, I'd probably be like, oh, let's see if we can slip a bit of that in.
Somebody told me it's periwinkle, so I don't know, and I'm not even sure what color that is.
Is that like that color on your shelf behind you?
I don't know.
Yarn, beautiful periwinkle blue in front of your book on your white shelves.
Yeah, I don't know. Might be. I don't know. Well, obviously, that's not the deciding factor when you get ready to choose a color, is it?
I mean, I do look for, you know, if I feel like at the moment, I feel like there's loads and loads of green going into interiors. And I'm really enjoying designing with green on my commercial textiles. And I've just installed some green curtains that I designed in my house. And so I do think that I am influenced by what might be happening in the world, but also, I mean, our trends might be very different from yours. I do hear that with Osborne and Little that I sell interior fabrics through. They say that it's the greys and the neutrals that sell better from my collection in America. Or the really really bold ones, you know. Whereas here we sell a lot of like soft blues and greens and ochres.
Speaking of influences, Mary Holm wants to know, what artists have influenced your work, and did you study any Albers at school?
Well, the Bauhaus weavers, yeah, of course they influenced me hugely, and especially the way that they designed for industry as well as art. And there was an amazing exhibition in the UK a couple of years ago now. It was at the Tate Gallery. And so it was really wonderful to see a weaver having this solo exhibition. It was Annie Albert's exhibition at the Tate. It was fantastic. So all the weavers got so excited, and it was brilliant. And you could see how she was influenced. So, yeah, and but also it was interesting because the piece that I've got here on the wall here, that's part of my tessellation series. And because it's a square and it's exploring colour, there is definitely there is a comparison to be made with Joseph Albers. Actually, what I think is really interesting is what might have been their relationship, you know, Joseph and Annie, because his paintings are so kind of weavy in their form, you know, so he was probably inspired by her as well. You know, squares and blocks are such a, you know, it's the perfect format for exploration with colour and form when you're a weaver. So it just makes sense.
Well, Nancy, I don't know if this was Riley. She wants to know, can you tell us the Scottish mill you're working with?
The mill that I'm working with at the moment is called Bute. So it's on the Isle of Bute.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they've got lovely recycled wool yarns, and yeah, it's really they're really thoughtful company.
then Jane Eisenstein wants to know, why do you use 4 shafts for the supplemental warp?
So how does she know that I use 4 shafts for my supplementary?
I don't know either. I thought, did I miss that?
No. I'm sure.
Go, Jane.
So yeah, so each of the blocks, so on, for example, this piece up here, you can see clear blocks. Each block is on 2 shafts, but then I have 4 shafts that do the supplementary. Oh yeah, it's because I said I did it on a 24 shaft loom, and I had 10 blocks of 2 shafts. Mathematics.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Worked it out.
It's a whole math thing. I missed it.
Yeah, so I just use the 4 remaining shafts just to do the stitch. They could be on 2. They don't need to be on 4. They could be on 2. I just tend to use, like at the moment, I've got a 12 block pattern that I'm weaving on this 32 shaft loom, and there's 8 shafts remaining, and I'm just putting the stitches over 8.
Okay.
So they only need 2. Just spreads it out a bit, makes it a bit more even across the shaft.
Margo, I can't believe it, but it's time to quit for the day. Thank you so much for your time and sharing about your work and your creativity. It's been wonderful. We really do appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. It's a real pleasure.
So I'm planning my trip to England. I'll contact you. We'll all be over there to see you.
I've got a couple of workshops next year.
Oh, good, good.
See them on the website.
There you go. Check out her website. There's all kinds of information on there about her work, the workshops. Also, we put in the chat how to see the video. So look through those chats so you can see this video that she did, her talk for the Turner Award. If I do want to say thank you to our sponsor, which was Tabby Tree Weavers and Sandy Lemon. Check out her website for those special, if you're looking for holiday gifts. She has gift cards that you might want to buy, or some yarn. She has a great collection. She too will be offering classes. So check out her website and see what she has to offer. And again, it's tabbytreeweavers.com. Thank you, Sandy. We appreciate it. Yeah. We also want to thank all those who have donated to the Fiber Trust. We had a big turnout for Giving Tuesday, and we really, really do appreciate that, because the programs that HGA offers, such as the COE, this show, Textiles and Tea, our publication of the magazine, those aren't covered by the membership and sponsorship. We have to find other ways to support those programs, and also all the new programs. We're doing Spinning and Weaving Week. We have a bunch of new programs coming up this spring, and your donations to the Fiber Trust and your membership help support these programs, as well as the grants, scholarships, and our interns, who we all love at Convergence. They're wonderful. So the income from Convergent provides for 2 years of operating cost. And of course, Convergence got postponed. So we've been running in the red for the last 3 years. So your donations now has made a huge impact on our bottom line. So with your help, we hope to meet our fundraising goal for December. We had a great ending to 2021. We're trying to raise $9,500 this month. We've made a big impact last Textiles and Tea. So please consider giving a gift. It's that end of the year when you're going to make your generous donations. I hope you'll keep in mind HGA. We would really appreciate it. You can donate online at weavespindye.org, or you can call us and we'll be glad to help with your donation. We're excited. Next week, we have Molly McLaughlin, who's going to be on the program. Thank you much for joining us today. Have a wonderful week and happy tea.